In this video, I'm going to go over how to hire your first AI agency developers. I know that hiring can be scary. I know that there's always a fear of, what if they steal my data? How do I know if they're actually working? How much should I pay them? Do you go per hour? Do you go per project? I'm going to spend the next few minutes answering all these questions and more, so buckle up. This is about 3 years worth of content that I'm going to try to condense into a few minutes. If you don't know who I am, my name's Tal, and I run Prompt Advisors alongside my business partner, Mark, where we help businesses integrate AI to speed up processes, make more money, and get some of their time back. Now, I use this channel as a sort of launch pad of stuff that I wish I would have known when I started and trying to answer the questions that I had to figure out on my own. However, I actually recently launched a community for people who are just starting their AI agency and who are not simply AI enthusiasts, but actually want to build a business out of this. It's a completely free community. You can just jump in. I'm going to be sharing resources and things. Essentially, think of it like more in-depth version of what I'm sharing here. So I'll see you in there if that's of interest. So let's go back to hiring. Typically, when you'll do this, you'll have a problem that you're trying to solve. And you will also typically fall into one of two different buckets. Either you have a solution, you just don't have the time to build it, or you don't have the technical expertise to build said solution. Now, I have had the chance to be in both of these buckets. So now the next step is, okay, I don't know how to do this, or I don't have time to do this. Let me hire somebody who can help me with this. And I want us to actually set some ground rules or some definitions that we're all talking about the same thing. The word developer is actually very similar to the word doctor. It is an umbrella term for a multitude of different disciplines that all fall under the same sort of category. So you can have developers that are very, very different and completely different things, and they're all fall under developers. For example, to use the doctor analogy, a heart specialist is very different to a brain specialist, but they're both doctors. They share the same foundation, but they went different directions. You can consider developers the same way. And there's two distinctions that I'm going to make that are going to be useful for the rest of this video. And those distinctions are, there are people who are front-end developers and people who are back-end developers. Now, front-end refers to everything that you see on any sort of software. Like I've got here, buttons, colors, layouts, etc. The stuff you see. Then you have back-end. Backend refers to the stuff that you don't see, right? Data transfers from screen to screen or from a computer to the server. A really good example of this would be you typing the word dog is front end. But as soon as you press enter, that request, that word is now sent to a server somewhere to try to find videos that are related to that topic and give them back to you. That research, that's backend stuff. That's stuff you don't see. There's a good analogy here, which is think of it like a house. So your front end would be the paint, the roof, the walls, the interior design, stuff like that. And the back end would be much more the plumbing, the wiring, the foundation, the stuff that actually makes it work. So who should you hire first? The answer typically that I give to people is you want somebody who's full stack. Full stack typically means that they are just adept at both. They know a lot about front end and they also know a lot about back end. They are good at both. There's a couple different reasons why. But to continue the house analogy, a full-stack developer would be like a general contractor. They are experienced in all facets of building a house. So they have a flexibility where if you do need front end or if you need back end, you can go to the same person. Not only does this give you more flexibility, but communication is also a big part. One thing you'll know as you build your development team is communication becomes really challenging because all the pieces have to talk to each other. That becomes a lot easier if one person is building that because they don't have to talk about why they're building a thing a specific way. They already know why. So when they go to build the front end of it, there's no confusion as to why the back end works this way. Now, one thing that I would suggest you even ask yourself is, do you actually need a developer? There's pros and cons to both sides, and I will make my suggestion afterwards, but I at least want to show you what those pros and cons are. Obvious pro, you spend more of the time on sales and marketing, and you have somebody to help support the existing projects that you have. Now, the cons, well, you have to pay this individual. You now are adding an extra task on your side, which is now management of somebody else. And there's always a risk whenever you're bringing other people into your company and relating to data, client projects, things of that nature. So it is worth weighing those depending on what you do. So if you're working a lot more sensitive, I would be a lot more careful with who you hire. So to answer the question, do you need a developer or when should you hire a developer? I would say learn the basics of automation first and then you hire somebody. What I mean by learn the basics is tools such as Make.com or AnyDent. These are typically low code or no code tool, and they essentially allow you to do a few things that are typically more back-end related and potentially on your own. So depending on what you're trying to build, you may not even need a developer. When I started, I didn't have a developer at all. I was just using Make.com. Now, I couldn't build any front ends. I couldn't build any really cool sort of custom designs. I could obviously use Webflow or website builders, but I couldn't build the software. The reason why you want to learn these tools, Make.com and AnyDent, is they give you a certain amount of autonomy. Essentially, you can rest easy or easier, knowing that worst case scenario, you can build it yourself. It might be of less quality, and it might take you a lot more time, but you are never going to be caught with your pants down completely and you can't deliver anything. I want to bring up something as well. Whenever you do hire somebody, do not hire. The reflex can be, okay, well, I use Make.com, so I should hire somebody who's great at Make.com. Make.com and AnyDent are, consider them shortcuts to development. What I mean by that is somebody who's great at development, they'll be able to pick up Make.com or AnyDent in a day or two because it is just a very easy way to do what they do, right, at a lower level. However, it's been my experience that people who market themselves as AnyDent or Make.com developers are just really bad developers who can't do a lot of custom. So they have to rely on the buzzword that is low-code expert. Yeah, and this is essentially what I was talking about, where I say these are just tools. They're shortcuts to what a good developer is already doing. It is much easier to go from custom code to Make.com than it is from Make.com to custom code. Because you have to also remember that Make.com is just a very pretty way and it's a much less powerful way of doing what custom code does. So my suggestion, you hire a full stack developer, and if the software that you're building is appropriate, then ask them to use AnyDent for it or ask for their advice on what to use. And one thing to ask yourself as well afterwards is, what are you actually hiring them for? What I mean by that is, whenever you start hiring people, it is really important to consider, why are you hiring them? What are you hiring them for? My rule, whenever I started my agency, was I had no interest in reinventing the wheel. So I have a philosophy that I still use to this day. Whenever I enter a new market or new product, I don't go in with the mentality of reinventing the wheel. I will typically start off by taking something that is already existing, and I will then tweak it and make it better for my target audience. I'll give you an example. So when I started, I knew I wanted to sell chatbots or custom knowledge chatbots, which is essentially like ChatGPT connected to some PDFs that customers can talk to ask questions about even the business. Like, think of it like the FAQ section on a website, but on steroids. So I found a template that I liked on a YouTube video, and I hired a developer to help me make that template, which I believe was for a completely different niche. I want to make this, but for roofing companies, right? So it needs to ask questions that are related to roofing. I need to be able to deploy it on my own, and we need to make these adjustments so that somebody could upload a picture, and then the AI would actually analyze the picture and see, is your roof good, is it bad, etc. That's what I did. Notice how I didn't come up with a brand new solution. I took the existing solutions and I tweaked it and made it better for my audience. And I suggest you do the exact same thing. Find what's already out there, what's already available. Be templates, resource, and hell, I've taught resources and templates in some of my older videos. Same thing. And typically, I would suggest finding something in another niche so that you're not copying, and take that, tweak it for your specific niche, and hire somebody to help you build it or to help you tweak it, assuming that you already know AnyDent and Make.com. So next on the chopping block, where do you find these people? A couple different places. I want to just show you 3 that I've used personally. You got Fiverr, which is typically where I would start off. Then you have Upwork, which I have found to usually be more expensive. And then lastly, a more recent one has been Skool, which is community-based. If you guys, my community right now is on Skool, the one I spoke about in the beginning of this video. And this can be a hit or miss, but I have hired from all these 3, and I have had success in all these 3. So once you do find somebody, what do you look for? What do you say? First, hire for personality more than you hire for skills. Because most people, for the stuff that we're doing, this isn't some super advanced PhD level stuff. You just need somebody who knows their stuff a little bit. So that's why I'm much more concerned with the personalities of people that I'm hiring, much more than their technical skills. As the company grows, correct, you do need more technical people. But in the beginning, a lot of the stuff is actually pretty straightforward in the grand scheme of things once you look back on it. But what I mean by you hire for personality, when you get on the call with them, do they have their camera on? Are they presentable? Do they have a lot of noise going on around them? You don't want those people. because these people, if eventually they do need to get on a call with your clients, they are a representation for you as a brand, which means if they are not presentable, or if this is the type or the level of people that you hire, that reflects on you. So take into consideration, would I show this person to my client? Second question I always ask is, what have you built before? And then I just ask for demos. Just show me what you've done. Like, if you say you've done X, Y, or Z, show me X, Y, or Z thing. No problem at all. And the last thing I ask is, do you have any references? People who you'll find on Fiverr, Upwork, etc. They should be able to provide you references of previous work that they've done, right? Ask for numbers, etc. And then actually call them and see what they say. You'll be amazed by how many people crumble at me asking this question, because oftentimes people stop working with a certain individual because they're just bad. And I want to make a note here. Be very careful about somebody who talks about low code or no code. I want to emphasize the point that these low code, no code solutions are meant as shortcuts for the actual thing. You need the actual thing, not the shortcut. Or not somebody who presents the shortcut as, oh yes, I'm amazing at Make.com. That is not the level of talent that you want. Let's go into more practical questions that you can ask. Firstly, what's your time zone? And also, what time zone do you work? The reason why you want to ask this is, assuming most people who are watching this, typically my audience is in the US, Canada, or in Europe is a bit less challenging, but oftentimes the people they're going to end up working with will be in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or Southeast Asia. Now, that is a pretty challenging time zone. A lot of people there are used to it, but it is critical that you emphasize that you work on whatever time zone you are watching this from. If you live in Serbia, or if you live in Portugal, or if you live in Mexico, doesn't matter. But your development team needs to work on the same time zone as you. Not geographically, but if you're working, you need to have access to your dev team. The amount of time is going to be wasted if when you work, they sleep, and when they sleep, you work. Ask them, what's your availability for calls? Can you jump on a call with me and my client? How much heads up do I need to give you? Are you comfortable with that? Then also ask, how many hours can you commit to this per week? Is this a Monday to Friday? Is this just a project based? These are the type of questions that you need to ask both yourself and your developer as to what do you need. And last thing that I like to ask is, what's the long-term goal? Because typically there'll be two types of people. You're gonna have somebody who wants to build their agency, and you're gonna have somebody who's much more interested in just having a stable job. Both of these have pros and cons. For example, the person who wants to start their own agency, they typically are more motivated. They are more likely to search up solutions on their own. And people who just want a stable job, they just care about getting that paycheck. And while they probably aren't going to leave you at any point, they can somehow come off as more lazy, so to speak. Really just depends on what you need. I want to bring up something that I wish I would have spent more time on than when I started. And that is the concept of documentation. It's so easy to get caught up when you're building something to just build. However, I cannot stress the importance of having documentation for especially stuff that's custom. Like if it's an end-to-end workflow, whatever, depending on the type of workflow. But if it's an actual piece of software that you built, you need documentation on how the stuff works. Without it, you essentially get trapped by whoever built it, and you can never let go of them, because where else are you going to go? Any other developer is going to have no idea what they're even looking at, and they're going to have to essentially play detective to understand what this even is. And that's not a good place to want to be. And a good developer documents their work so that others can build on top of it. A good developer isn't selfish and thinking, oh no, this is going to be just for me and nobody else will touch this. That is not somebody that you want on your team. Somebody who thinks like that is not somebody you want to be working with. So as far as payment structure goes, it's typically pretty simple. You can either pay somebody salary or hourly. Let's talk about both. So when I started, most of the developers that I found, the range was typically between $500 to $1,000 a month. And it was typically on the lower side of that, more than 500. Now, the level of people you can hire for that type of money, for full-time work, for example, can be pretty challenging. But this completely depends. It's a very personal situation to you. How much can you afford, right? And how much do you need is also another element. If your software is super simple and doesn't require a lot of development time or skill, then you should probably hire somebody on the lower end. But if it's a pretty in-depth, complex project, well, my opinion is don't even start there and start building something way simpler. But typically, the more complex something is, the more you want to pay for it so that you get the best quality. Schedule is pretty simple. You can either you can do weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. I like you bi-weekly just to have a bit more stability. And people tend to spend whatever amount you pay them. So if you pay them monthly, very quickly they're going to go back to, I need my next pay. Now, as far as how you pay them, That's actually pretty simple. I mean, we've used Payoneer, we've used Wise, I've used Remitly, Western Union, cash deposits, whatever it is. And there are two things to consider. If it's on Upwork, typically I'll do on platform. And if it's on Fiverr, typically I'll do off platform for a multitude of different reasons. But typically on Fiverr, I found that the culture is pay off platform, and Upwork, they seem to be much more adherent to being on platform. A question I get asked pretty often is, well, but what did they work for other companies? The reality is when you're starting, they probably will work for other companies. At the same time, you are just a client amongst 3, 4, maybe 5 different clients. The reality is that's okay. As long as your deliverables are being met on time, there is no problem. I want to clarify something. We are interested in the result, not in the method. What I mean by that is, if I need something to work and the developer takes 1 hour to make the whole system work, as far as I'm concerned, they deserve to get paid the 20 hours or 40 hours a week that they're putting in, because the result was the same. Were the deliverables met? That is much more important than how long you spent on it. There's a couple things actually, as far as setting expectation goes. And I have 4 rules that I use that I want to share with you. These are called my 4 company pillars. Let me go through them quickly. First, resourcefulness. And this is something you have to talk about with your developers. Don't ask me stuff that can be Googled or searched online. Like, that's just laziness. What do you think if you ask me a question that isn't pertinent to me and I have to go look it up? Well, why am I looking it up? You should have done that first. Second, clear communication. If you send a message out to myself, to a client, whatever it is, get crystal clear on what it is that you're looking for, what you've done to solve the problem, and what you think you should do next. So many people are so lazy in their writing. It's the biggest waste of time. So we make it very clear. I need clear, concise communication. Third is urgency. If something takes 5 minutes and you have 5 minutes, do it. So like if I send you an email or if I send you a message, I need quick responses. If there's something that we do for a client, do it as soon as possible. Don't let things drag out unnecessarily. And number 4 is take responsibility. If you have a project, you are the owner of that project. If you have a deliverable, you're the owner of it. You are responsible for making it work. That's my 4 pillars. And just by communicating these, people take you a lot more seriously. Now, what are the jobs of both people? Yourself as the employer, your job is to define the objective. Where are we going, right? What are we trying to build? The job of the employee, on this case the developer, to define how are we going to get there. These are 2 very different roles. The example that I got here is, let's say you want to build a chatbot that books appointments. That is the objective. That is where we are trying to get to. It now becomes the developer's job to start thinking, okay, well, what calendar are we using? What CRM? How does it integrate together? If they aren't asking clarifying questions in order to build your product, they aren't a good developer. This is basic stuff. So you remember earlier when I said personality is more important than hard skills? This is what I'm referring to. You're looking for somebody who has a good head on their shoulders and is thinking clearly instead of just following commands. And I have wasted so much time with people who don't do this. And I'm telling you, it's a frustrating thing because everybody simply wastes time. And there's something important I want to bring up when it comes to the responsibilities of each. The reason why it's so important to clarify that the developer's role is to figure out how we're going to get there is, if you knew how to get there, then one of us wouldn't be needed. Like if I knew what I wanted to build and exactly how to build it, I could just do it, then I probably would have just done it. The reason you are here is because I don't know how to get there, typically. Also, there's the time aspect, but mainly it's I don't know how to get there. Okay, so you've now hired your developer, and how do you deal with that? I try to do something which I call the 3 daily questions. This is actually, I think it's actually a pretty famous sort of methodology, but essentially boils down to try to meet every day. And I like to ask people 3 different questions. The first one is, what progress did we make yesterday? What are we working on today? And what blockers or stoppers do we believe are in our way that would stop us from doing number 2? If you just ask these 5 questions every single day, you will get so far. And this forces people to have to show something every single day. It also helps you keep a pulse on how stuff is doing. Oftentimes, there will be blockers that you can just resolve on that call. One more point I want to bring up is this concept of done. You need to clearly define what does done mean for you. For me, done meant this system has to be tested so that it completes the objective that I said originally. And even testing needs to be defined. Testing doesn't mean it works once. It needs to be tested a few dozens of times at least so that we get an idea of how often it fits. A task isn't done until it's tested. And this changes from sort of project to project, but typically for people who are newer, I will sort of request a loom of the future working, multiple tests with different variables, and the expected outputs. Now, one thing that is pretty important as well is access and security. How much access should you give people? And one thing I want you to remember is most people generally are okay, right? Most people aren't out to screw you over purposefully. So I also want to take that out of the equation. Secondly, if you're hiring people on Fiverr, Upwork, typically they will have reviews. Obviously, don't hire somebody who's brand new. Hire somebody who has already done a few jobs, they've proven themselves, they made at least a few like above $5,000 on X platform. And typically those types of people are much less likely to screw you over because they have something to lose. Because if they screw you over, you should complain to the platform. And by the way, heads up, if you want to complain to the platform, you have to take payments on platform. Just a heads up. That insurance is something you do lose if you are paying these people off platform. And I think a lot of the fear around this is twofold. Either they're going to steal my data or they're going to steal my product. The data portion completely depends on what you're building. If you are building something that is data sensitive, then you want to be a lot more careful about who you hire. Especially this can open you up to legal problems, etc. We typically don't work with a lot of client data, so to speak, like the closest one, especially when we're getting started. You probably don't want to really get close to anything relating to client data. Like we were dealing with chatbots and PDFs of materials that roofing companies use and pretty standard stuff. There wasn't anything in there that would be revolutionary or crazy for a leak. The second fear, which is I think a lot more common, is over they're going to take my idea, they're going to take my product, I want to protect my intellectual property rights, whatever. Let me paint you a picture. The reality is your idea probably isn't novel. It's probably not the greatest idea. You're probably not reinventing the wheel. And the good news is that the product typically isn't the hard part. Getting customers is the hard part. Most people, like most developers, they could have built this product. Yeah, they might steal your product, but that doesn't mean they're going to get clients. Most of this business is getting clients, not actually building the product. So my default response to this is take the product if you want. That doesn't mean you're going to get any customers. They just lost a job and they have no customers. So who's really the loser? So I wouldn't worry about a developer stealing your product because it's not actually as valuable as you think it is. Just steal, I mean. So more practically, if there's certain access you need to give them, be careful about giving somebody complete admin access. And here's another way to test somebody who's a good developer versus bad. How much access do they want? Do they want all the access or do they want just the access that they need? And typically, the best developers, they'll tell you, no, I don't need any more. This is all I really need because I'm only doing A, B, or C thing. In whatever software you're talking about, whether it's Facebook or Google or whatever integration you need to create, look for what platforms or what access do they want. And the more they want that seems outside the scope of necessity, that's when red flags start ringing. And I just ask, what access do you need? And why? And the thing is, you have time. Something they'll try to slide it under the rug. No, just ask why you need so much access. What are we doing that requires so much access? To wrap it up, key takeaways: learn the basics first, and then make.com so that you don't get caught with your pants down. And also another thing is by learning these tools, it at least gives you some foundation about automations in general. Because otherwise, how are you even going to hire? How would you know what a good answer versus a bad one if they start talking about technologies when you've never even touched this stuff? And this is where you sort of consult a friend, or if you have a developer friend, ask them to help you with this sort of stuff. But learn the basics first to a certain degree. Hire somebody who's full stack, not a low-code expert. Don't reinvent the wheel. Try to take a proven product and tweak it for your specific audience or your specific use case. And check references seriously. Documentation is non-negotiable. Pay salary, not hourly when starting. But keep in mind, this is your first developer. This is not the end-all be-all. And try to set up a meeting every single day and ask the 3 daily questions and require video proof testing. The final thing I want to leave you with is the thing that helped me sleep at night when I was just starting and I had hired my first developer was just understanding that, hey, look, there's a chance that this person is about to steal your product. Maybe. But the good news is that 80% of this business is actually finding customers and selling customers over just building a revolution of product. Focus on what matters. Now, if this was helpful, feel free to subscribe. Ask me any questions you have in the comments. I'll try to get back to them. And if you are serious about starting your own agency, like I said, I have an entirely free school community that you can just jump in. I'll share more resources about how to hire, the exact interview questions to ask. And right now, and I do free calls once a week. So feel free to jump in there and I'll try to help you out to the best of my ability. Otherwise, you can watch this video on how I went from 0 to 75 clients by using this one singular framework. Thanks.